Nepal. Land of towering peaks. Land of impossible roads. Land of temples and profound spirituality. A thin mist envelops ancient valleys. White stupas cling to the mountains. Mule caravans cross bridges suspended in the void. Welcome to Nepal. Welcome to the land of Buddha. Known for its breathtaking landscapes, this is a place where time flows to the rhythm of monks' prayers, where over 8 of the 10 tallest mountains in the world touch the sky, and where prayer flags color the heavens. But let's start from the beginning. Nepal stretches along the Himalayan chain, nestled between 2 giants, which are China to the north and India to the south. This country is home to more than half of the world's highest mountains, including Everest, which is the roof of the planet and rises 8,849 meters, or 29,032 feet above sea level. But it's Annapurna that holds a far more disturbing record. With 1 death for every 3 climbers, it's considered the most lethal mountain to climb, even more dangerous than Everest itself. In this vertical landscape live the guardians of the mountains. And we're talking about the Sherpa, who aren't simply guides, but an entire ethnic group with unique physical abilities to live at high altitude, carrying loads that would break most people's backs. Yaks are their faithful companions, carrying solar panels and sacks of rice at altitudes where even helicopters struggle to fly. These animals weigh as much as small trucks, but walk on ice with a confidence that defies all logic. In this nation, crossing canyons on suspension bridges made of ropes and wooden planks is normal for going to work or school, while the highest and most difficult roads on the planet wind along vertiginous cliffs and were carved into the rock with pickaxes and dynamite. Many high-altitude villages, in fact, are only reachable on foot or by jeep on these roads, where an error of just a few centimeters or a couple of inches means the void. Yet this harsh land is also the birthplace of modern trekking, with more than 1,500 official trails that attract adventurers from every corner of the planet, seeking an experience that no other place can offer. Continuing, Nepal is the oldest country in South Asia, the only one to never fall under foreign domination, preserving its independence even when European colonial powers were dividing up the continent. This identity is reflected in its incredible cultural diversity, with over 120 languages spoken and dozens of different ethnic groups that coexist in a human mosaic of rare complexity. Cows here are sacred by law, so much so that killing one carries 12 years in prison, a testament to how deeply spirituality permeates every aspect of daily life. And speaking of spirituality, in Buddhist and Hindu temples, the scent of incense mixes with murmured prayers, with monks turning prayer wheels, with gestures that have been repeated for centuries. There are also dozens of hydroelectric dams that harness the force of Himalayan rivers. But despite this, electricity is cut off every day for hours in entire neighborhoods. This is a paradox that reminds us how much this country is suspended between ancient and modern. Nepal, therefore, is much more than just a nation. It's an entire world. A place where humanity confronts its own limits and surpasses them every day. But now let's go discover the most incredible and iconic places of this nation. Mount Everest. The highest mountain on Earth towers at 8,848 meters, or about 29,029 feet, between Nepal and Tibet. Base camp at 5,364 meters, or about 17,598 feet, is the starting point for all expeditions toward the summit, where mountaineers spend months to acclimatize to the altitude. Since 1953, when the first two explorers reached the summit, thousands of people have attempted the same feat. To get there, one must cross the Khumbu Glacier, which is a river of moving ice, which continuously creates new crevasses. At this altitude, the air contains so little oxygen that even breathing becomes difficult. But from March to May, base camp fills with colorful tents full of hikers, waiting for the right moment for the climb. Kathmandu. The Nepalese capital sits at 1,400 meters, or 4,593 feet of altitude, trapped in a basin and surrounded by mountains. Here, over 1 million people live, and the streets intertwine in a labyrinth where motorcycles, rickshaws, and sacred cows share the same space. Temples appear at every corner, some with centuries of history behind them. The air smells of incense and spices, while street vendors shout to attract customers. During festivals, the city transforms, with colorful masks invading the squares and drums resounding until late at night. Despite the apparent chaos, there's a precise rhythm in this urban confusion, a balance that only those who truly live here manage to grasp. In the heart of the city, there's Rani Pokhari, which is a large water tank built in the 1600s. In the center, on a small island, stands a small temple dedicated to Shiva, accessible only via a bridge. The complex remains closed almost all year and opens only during the Tihar festival, when thousands of people enter to pray. Moving away from the center, however, the city reveals other stories. One concerns the Dharahara Tower, which is a white structure 62 meters, or 203 feet tall, that until 2015 dominated the entire Kathmandu Valley. It had been erected in the 1800s, and people climbed the long internal staircase to observe the Himalayas, but an earthquake made it collapse in just a few moments. Today, however, the tower has been rebuilt and rises once again over the city. Further east is Boudhanath, which is a large white stupa with Buddha's eyes painted on all four sides and facing every point of the valley. Pilgrims advance clockwise, brushing the prayer wheels, which hold thousands of sacred phrases. The air often smells of burnt yak butter, while monks whisper ancient words. Kathmandu, therefore, is an authentic city where daily life and spirituality continue to coexist without respite. Annapurna Circuit. A trekking route of 230 kilometers, or about 143 miles, which starts from the tropical plains at 800 meters, or about 2,625 feet, and reaches all the way to the eternal ice at 5,416 meters, or about 17,769 feet. The local ethnic groups transport supplies on suspension bridges, which cross very deep gorges. In the stone-built villages, instead, inhabitants offer travelers traditional butter tea. The path passes through various forests in which rare species like the red panda live, while the villages seem now frozen in time with their Tibetan traditions. Lumbini. In southern Nepal, near the border with India, lies one of the holiest places in world Buddhism. Here in 623 BC, Siddhartha Gautama was born, the one whom the world would know as Buddha. And we're not talking about legends because there's archaeological evidence in stone pillars erected by Emperor Ashoka in 249 BC that confirm it. The sacred garden extends for kilometers, dotted with monasteries built by Buddhist communities from around the world. There's the Tibetan one, the Thai one, the Japanese one, each with its own architectural style. In the center, there's the Bodhi tree and the pond, where Buddha's mother would have bathed before giving birth. Monks in robes of every color walk in meditation, while prayer flags flutter in the wind. This place attracts millions of pilgrims every year, all seeking that peace that Buddha himself taught. Khumbu Valley. The highest inhabited valley in the world extends like a natural corridor toward Everest, dotted with ancient Sherpa villages which cling to the Himalayan slopes. Along this sacred route, villages and communities preserve millennia-old traditions, while their stone houses and decorated monuments testify to a culture forged by high altitude. The yak caravans transport goods between these remote settlements, following ancient trade routes which for centuries have connected Tibet to Nepal. Here there are also monasteries perched in incredible panoramic locations, offering breathtaking views of the highest mountain on Earth. Buddhist monks typically begin their prayers before dawn as the rising sun gradually illuminates the surrounding peaks. Upper Mustang. On the border between Nepal and Tibet, the land opens into a kaleidoscope of colors. We find stratified walls that range from oxide red to ochre yellow, and from ash gray to chalk white. Millions of years of marine sediments have transformed into vertical canyons and pinnacles that soar like natural towers. These rock formations tell of when the Himalayas emerged from the sea. The landscape changes multiple times, passing from spires to eroded ridges, with the Yarlung River cutting through these arid lands, rich with monasteries clinging to the cliffs. And it's precisely in these colorful cliffs, at hundreds of meters or several hundred feet high, that there's an extraordinary secret, namely caves carved into the red sandstone that seem impossible to reach. Yet for centuries they were inhabited, and we find monasteries, houses, and storerooms carved into the living rock. Some caves date back over 2,000 years ago and still contain Buddhist frescoes with vivid colors. Archaeologists still don't know for certain how people climbed to those heights without modern equipment. Perhaps rope ladders, or perhaps paths that collapsed over the centuries. The mystery, however, remains, along with the treasures hidden in these dark chambers. Pokhara and Phewa Lake. The most famous tourist city in Nepal develops on the shores of a lake with a view of the Annapurna chain. With its lively neighborhoods alternating with quiet areas, it offers a relaxed pace. In the depths of Phewa Lake lie ancient submerged temples. While in the center, on a small island, stands the Bagmati Temple, reachable only by boat for morning ceremonies. The lake shores are animated by rows of colorful boats, moored among weeping willows, while small cafes offer refreshment to visitors. The local fishermen still weave past traditions, while in the sky, paragliders exploit the warm air currents that rise from the valley. All around, the terraced hills show the patient agricultural work of farmers. There are rice paddies that change color with the seasons, millet fields, and small gurung villages with stone houses and temples decorated with prayer flags. Chitwan National Park. Where the Himalayan mountains end, the Chitwan jungle begins, which extends for 932 square kilometers, or about 360 square miles. Usually, Indian rhinos cross the Rapti River with their characteristic single horn. Bengal tigers instead hunt at night, while elephants create paths in the forest that other animals will use later. In the rivers swim gharial crocodiles, an ancient and very rare species. Moreover, the forest rangers patrol the park on elephant back, and it is precisely thanks to their protection that rhinos have increased from 100 to 645 specimens. Bhaktapur. Imagine stopping for a moment and going back 500 years. Bhaktapur is exactly that, a medieval city where time has stopped. The streets are paved with red bricks worn by centuries of footsteps, and carved wooden houses overlook silent courtyards. Here, people still live by craftsmanship, with potters shaping clay with gestures passed from father to son, weavers working wooden looms, and carvers transforming logs into works of art. In the main square, called Durbar Square, vendors arrange spices in colorful piles next to offerings of flowers and rice. Among the temples, dotting every corner, women light butter lamps and leave marigold petals on stone statues, simple gestures that keep an ancient devotion alive. Among the buildings that define the city, the Palace of 55 Windows is the one that most tells the story of the city itself and the care with which every detail was built. It dates back to 1427, when King Yaksha Malla had a facade built, entirely decorated with dozens of carved wooden windows, each with inlays representing deities, animals, and geometric motifs. This is Bhaktapur, a city that continues to live through the hands of its artisans, preserving a heritage that still sustains Nepal's identity. Thorong La Pass. At 5,416 meters, or 17,769 feet, the air contains half the oxygen you breathe at sea level. Every step becomes an effort, and every breath a luxury. This is what happens at Thorong La, a pass that connects the Langtang Valley with the Mustang Valley, part of the Annapurna Circuit. Colorful prayer flags wave violently in the icy wind, carrying prayers away toward the sky. Many leave at night to cross it when the path is still frozen and stable. Dawn from up here transforms the mountains into golden giants, while below clouds move like waves. Reaching the top isn't a matter of strength, but of patience and respect for the mountain. Pashupatinath Temple. On the banks of the Bagmati River, where water flows toward the Ganges, stands this complex dedicated to Shiva. It's the most sacred place for Nepalese Hindus. Here, public cremations take place, with bodies wrapped in orange fabrics and laid on wooden pyres lit by the eldest son. Smoke rises toward the sky while relatives pray, and ashes are then scattered in the river. It may seem harsh, but for them, death is just a passage, not an end. Sadhus, that is monks who live by meditation and renunciation, are dressed in orange with long beards and sit on the temple steps. Not everyone can enter the main temple because access is reserved only for Hindus. Langtang Valley. This valley is slowly being reborn after the devastating earthquake of 2015, which caused a destructive avalanche. The villages have been rebuilt and the paths restored to allow pilgrims to return. In this valley, yaks and mules graze at high altitude, sharing the territory with the very rare snow leopards. Moreover, a large glacier feeds lakes considered sacred, where the faithful immerse themselves to seek purification. In Kianjin Gompa Monastery, finally, monks preserve ancient Buddhist traditions with chants and ceremonies that resonate among the mountains. Swayambhunath. "365 stone steps, shaped by centuries of human passage, lead to the top of the hill." From up here, Kathmandu spreads at your feet, with the Himalayan mountains closing the horizon. The white stupa shines in the sun, with painted eyes looking in the four cardinal directions. But here, you're never alone. In fact, hundreds of rhesus macaques have made this place their home, jumping between temple roofs and stealing food from distracted visitors. According to legend, when Manjushri drained the lake that covered the Kathmandu Valley, the lice from his hair transformed into these monkeys. True or not, monkeys here are considered sacred, and no one dares disturb them as they play among the prayer wheels. Namche Bazaar. Nestled at 3,440 meters on a horseshoe-shaped mountainside, Namche Bazaar is the gateway to Everest. This village offers spectacular views of Himalayan peaks including Everest, Lhotse, and Dablam. Historically, it was an important trading center where Sherpas exchanged products with Tibetan merchants before the conquest of Everest in 1953 transformed the place into a fundamental stop for mountaineers from all over the world. The heart of social life is the lively Saturday market, where local products and traditional crafts can be found. Here the Sherpas, who are famous for their climbing abilities, keep Buddhist traditions alive despite tourism. Tilicho Lake. At 4,919 meters, or 16,138 feet of altitude, lies one of the highest lakes on the planet. The water has an unreal turquoise color, fed by glaciers that surround the basin. Getting here requires days of trekking through exposed trails and frequent avalanches. The silence is absolute, interrupted only by wind whistling through the rocks and the sound of your footsteps on the snow. Rocky walls reflect on the still water, while in winter the lake freezes completely, transforming into a white expanse. Those who arrive up here carry with them not only photos, but the awareness of having touched one of the most remote places on Earth. Muktinath Temple. At 3,800 meters, or about 12,467 feet, rises a unique temple where the Hindu and Buddhist religions coexist peacefully. From the temple spring 108 fountains shaped like bullheads, where the faithful bathe regardless of the cold. Next to the sanctuary, a large statue of the Buddha, adorned with orange ribbons and facing the snow-covered mountains, welcomes pilgrims as a symbol of meditation and universal compassion. Here, Buddhist monks and Hindu priests celebrate their rites in the same spaces, witnessing a centuries-old tradition of tolerance. Lalitpur. Crossing the Bagmati River from Kathmandu, you find yourself in another era. Lalitpur, also called Patan, lives by beaten metal and carved wood. Here, artisans still work as their ancestors did centuries ago, transforming copper sheets into statues of Buddha and Hindu deities, destined for temples throughout Asia. The heart of the city beats in Durbar Square, where palaces and temples overlook a stone-paved square. Carvings on portals depict stories of gods and demons, while in courtyards women weave colorful carpets. Life flows slowly through this city's narrow alleys, with children playing among shops and families gathering on temple steps to chat, sharing spiced tea and stories of the day. Dablam. Seen from Tengboche village, this mountain dominates the horizon with its 6,812 meters or 22,349 feet. The shape resembles a mother protecting her child. In fact, Amma means mother, and Dablam is the traditional pendant that Sherpa women wear around their necks. And the glaciers hanging from the summit look exactly like that jewel. Climbers fear and respect it because the walls are technical, and climbing requires experience, not just physical endurance. Many consider it the most beautiful mountain in the Himalayas, and for Sherpas it's sacred, home to deities that shouldn't be disturbed. Gorkha. From this village perched on a hill, the unification of Nepal began. In 1768, the king of Gorkha, Prithvi Narayan Shah, conquered the Kathmandu Valley and founded the kingdom we know today. The palace fortress still dominates the landscape, clinging to the rock like an eagle's nest. In the village alleys, old houses preserve carved windows and courtyards, where families still gather for traditional festivals. But Gorkha is famous above all for its warriors, who are the Gurkhas, legendary mercenaries who have fought for the British and Indian armies, earning a reputation for courage that endures to this day. Tengboche Monastery. In the Khumbu Valley, surrounded by rhododendrons that burst into red blooms in spring, stands this Buddhist monastery. It's the spiritual stop of the trek toward Everest Base Camp, and trekkers stop here to acclimatize, but also to seek blessings before going higher. The monks who live here follow the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, reciting mantras and playing longhorns during ceremonies. In 1989, an earthquake destroyed it almost completely, but the community rebuilt it stone by stone. From the monastery terrace, you can see Everest, Lhotse, and Dablam aligned, like sentinels of stone and ice. Nyatapola Temple. Five floors of carved wood rise 30 meters or 98 feet into Bhaktapur's sky. Each roof level protrudes slightly beyond the one below, creating a silhouette that has defied earthquakes for over 300 years. Built in 1702 in just 5 months, this temple is dedicated to Lakshmi, with the staircase leading to the entrance flanked by pairs of stone statues. Wrestlers, elephants, lions, griffins, and deities, each 10 times stronger than the previous, according to local mythology. Climbing these steps means passing through increasing levels of divine power. The wooden beams are held together without nails, only perfect joints, that allow the structure to sway during earthquakes without collapsing. Tengboche. Stone walls divide fields where potatoes and barley grow, which are the only crops that survive here, at 4,410 meters or 14,469 feet in height. This village sits on a windy plateau, surrounded by peaks exceeding 6,000 meters, or 19,685 feet. The Sherpas who live here have adapted everything to altitude. For example, houses have thick walls against the cold, and windows are small to retain heat. Trekkers heading to Everest stop for at least 2 nights to acclimatize, letting their bodies produce more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. During the day, many take excursions to the ridges above town, gaining altitude, then descending to sleep. The technique is called climb high, sleep low, and can make the difference for altitude sickness. Bagmati River. It springs from Himalayan glaciers and crosses Kathmandu like a vital vein, even though today its waters are darker than blue. For centuries it's been sacred, a place to purify oneself before prayers and after funerals. Even today, families bring their dead to its banks for cremations, and devotees continue to bathe in its waters during festivals, following rituals that haven't changed for millennia. Urban growth, however, has transformed the river into an open-air dump, with plastic, industrial waste, and sewage flowing south to the Ganges in India. Groups of volunteers every week go down with gloves and bags to clean the banks, trying to restore dignity to this watercourse that was once crystal clear. Lukla Airport. The runway is 527 meters, or 1,729 feet long, inclined 12%, and ends against a mountain wall. There are no second chances. Either you land on the first attempt, or you won't see anything anymore. Pilots who fly here must have special certifications and nerves of steel. The airport is the most dangerous in the world, and it's the only quick way to reach the Khumbu region without walking for days. The weather can change in minutes, with sudden fog, wind descending from glaciers, and clouds hiding the valley. There are delays even of entire days, and they're normal because patience is part of the Himalayan experience. World Peace Pagoda. On Ananda Hill above Pokhara, this white dome shines, visible from kilometers or several miles away. It was built by Japanese Buddhist monks in the 90s as a symbol of peace after centuries of conflicts in the region. Shanti in Sanskrit means exactly peace, and the idea was to create a place where people of every religion could meditate together. The ascent crosses rhododendron forests, and once at the top, Phewa Lake spreads below, like a mirror. Concluding this visual journey through Nepal, we move from the impossible peaks of the Himalayas to temples and villages suspended among clouds, exploring together not only places, but also traditions that make every corner of this land unique. We hope that the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the extraordinary beauty of this country.